All the way from your call at UC San Diego, it's The Dating Game. Here's the star of the show, your host, Jim Lang.
Thank you. You're beautiful. And welcome once again to The Dating Game. And now, it's time to meet our first 3 eligible bachelorettes. And here they are. Well, I'll tell you about these gals. Bachelorette number 1 is a really stimulating kind of gal, guaranteed to keep you up all night long. Bachelorette number 2 is known to get your heart racing, pun intended, and just the right dose of energy that any heart needs. Bachelorette number 3 is a dark and mysterious type with looks that are to die for. Before we meet our bachelor for tonight's show, a few details regarding the criteria we use to measure the success of the date shared by our lucky couple.
The SVP wave illustrates atrial contraction, while the QRS complex denotes ventricular contraction and atrial relaxation. The T wave demonstrates ventricular relaxation. The PR interval is determined from the beginning of atrial contraction to the depolarization of the ventricle. The QT interval shows the beginning of ventricular depolarization to repolarization of the ventricle. An RR interval is one complete cardiac cycle, measured from the start of one R peak of the QRS complex to the subsequent R peak. The PR segment measures the beginning of the SVP wave up to the beginning of the QRS complex, but does not include the beginning of the P wave. An adjusted QT interval measures the beginning of the QRS complex to the end of the T wave. The systolic contraction amplitude was measured by recording the change in cardiac muscle length during ventricular systole, as expressed by the displacement of the arm of the isotonic length transducer. After calibrating, the SCA was defined as the maximum distance between the baseline and the negatively deflected peak that coincided with ventricular contraction and relaxation. The phase diagram for cardiac contractile cells begins with phase 0. Phase 0 is characterized by rapid depolarization as a result of an influx of sodium. The phase 1 brief repolarization is due to the closing of sodium channels and the opening of potassium channels. This is very brief due to the beginning of phase 2 and the opening of LTCCs causing an influx of calcium into the cytosol. This influx causes the cells to depolarize. This depolarization is balanced by the large efflux of potassium that is happening concurrently. Phase 3 is a rapid repolarization of the contractile cell due to the closing of LTCCs and a large increase in the efflux of potassium. This is followed by phase 4 consistent resting membrane potential. The phase diagram for nodal cells begins with phase 0. Phase 0 is characterized by a depolarization due to the opening of LTCCs allowing calcium to enter the cell. Phase 2 describes when the LTCCs begin to close and the cell is no longer depolarizing. Phase 3 is a major repolarization due to the opening of potassium channels and the closing of LTCCs. Phase 4 is an unstable resting membrane potential due to the presence of I-funny channels in the membrane. These channels are always permeable to sodium, resulting in a constantly changing membrane potential. This unstable membrane potential is why the nodal cells have automaticity and therefore are the pacemakers of the heart.
And now we meet our eligible bachelor for tonight's show. He just ended a long-term relationship and is feeling a little sluggish and down-regulated. He has come to the show to find a new spark to get his blood pumping again. Please welcome Brady Cardia! Hello, Brady. You don't look so good. Feeling down, huh? Well, you have 3 contestants, each of them a solution to your problem. Let's have our contestants say hello to Brady. Bachelorette number 1.
Hi, Brady.
Number 2.
Good evening, Brady.
Number 3.
Hola, Brady.
Okay, Brady, do you have your questions ready?
Well, I am kind of slow right now, so I only prepared one question for the group. Bachelorette number 1, what can you do for my achy breaky heart?
Caffeine is a nonspecific inhibitor of phosphodiesterase PDE. It competitively inhibits PDE and prevents PDE from degrading CAMP after it is produced by adenylate cyclase. This results in an increase in the concentration of CAMP in the cytosol. CAMP activates protein kinase A. pKa activates L-type calcium channels to open, allowing a greater amount of calcium to enter the cell. Additionally, pKa activates the ryanodine receptor 2 of the sarcoplasmic reticulum to open and allow calcium to enter the cell down its gradient. These two concurrent events result in a greater concentration of calcium in the interior of the cell. Further, caffeine causes RYR2 to be more sensitive to calcium. This increased sensitivity results in a greater conformational change in RYR2 and a greater efflux of calcium out of the SR into the cytosol, because RYR2 are calcium-induced calcium release channels. In addition to inducing the increase in concentration of CAMP and subsequent increase in pKa results in the aforementioned effects. pKa also will inhibit phospholamban. PLB is an inhibitor of the SERCA2 pump, which pumps calcium out of the cytosol into the SR following cardiac contraction. By inhibiting PLB, SERCA2 is able to uptake calcium into the SR earlier and more quickly in the cardiac cycle. pKa phosphorylates potassium channels in the membrane, causing them to open and repolarize the membrane. The elevated levels of pKa induce the phosphorylation of more potassium channels to open. This causes more rapid repolarization of the muscle and a shorter phase 2 of the contractile action potential. The pKa increase also causes the potassium channels to open earlier during the cardiac cycle. Caffeine has the same effect on cardiac nodal cells and shares the same mechanism of PDE degradation. The increased levels of CAMP result in an increase in pKa, which phosphorylates LTCC, while the increased CAMP increases the activation of funny channels. Funny channel activation causes an increase in the depolarization of the membrane due to an influx of sodium. The activation of LTCC increases the amount of calcium entering the nodal cell, further depolarizing the membrane. The activation of potassium channels cause them to open sooner.
Bachelorette number 2, can you sing my heartbeat song?
While isoproterenol enacts similar results on cardiac performance as caffeine, it executes them using the same manner of control as a drug like epinephrine. In contractile cells, isoproterenol activates beta-1 GS protein-coupled transduction receptors, catalyzing the production of CAMP, activation of pKa, and influx of calcium into the cell. Increases in LTCC and RYR2 activity cause an increase in calcium concentration in the contractile cell and its subsequent increase in contractions and their strength, while the increase in SERCA2 activity causes a decrease in their duration as it pumps the calcium back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum even faster. Isoproterenol's activation of the beta receptors in the coupled G protein, GS, AC, CAMP, pKa pathway increases the intercellular calcium transient, thereby triggering the sarcoplasmic reticulum to release more calcium ions by calcium triggering calcium release mechanism. In nodal cells, isoproterenol stimulated utilization of cyclic AMP that is activated in the same way as in contractile cells, stimulates funny channels, increasing intracellular concentrations of calcium and its depolarization of the cell, and activates pKa, which in turn stimulates LTCCs. Together, the opening of both channels causes an increase in intracellular calcium transient similar to that of contractile cells.
Bachelorette number 3, can you make my heart go boom boom pow?
Higher concentrations of extracellular potassium results in potassium being unable to exit the cell down its gradient. Using Goldman's equation, the membrane potential becomes increasingly positive. This perpetual depolarization in the cell made it impossible for the cell to repolarize. Without repolarization occurring, the sodium voltage-gated channels remain inactivated and the cell is unable to hyperpolarize, and so action potentials can no longer be generated.
Well, Brady, it looks like this might be a tough one.
It is indeed. Bachelorette number 1, you sound quite like the pick-me-up, but Bachelorette number 2 sounds like she'd take good care of me. Oh, but I'm just so captivated by Bachelorette number 3. I love surprises.
All three are very well qualified. Who are you going to pick?
I think I'm gonna go with Bachelorette number 3. I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
Congratulations, Bachelorette number 3. Brady, Here's what you missed out on by not choosing one of our other two lovely bachelorettes. The lovely Caffeine.
Caffeine causes important changes within the cell. It causes an overall positive inotropic effect by increasing LTCC, RYR2, and circuit 2 activity in contractile cells. In nodal cells, caffeine has a positive chronotropic and dromotropic effect, increasing heart rate and nodal cell conduction respectively. The decrease in QT interval by 0.23 seconds, decreased PR segment by 0.16 seconds, decreased RR interval by 0.48 seconds, and increased SCA by 0.1342 millimeters are evidence of the increase in spontaneous depolarization and decrease in the threshold potential of the nodal cells, thus increasing the heart rate by 5 beats per minute, while the increased depolarization by the LTCCs speeds up AV node conduction. The inhibition of PDE increased the concentration of CAMP in the cell, causing an increase in intracellular calcium. This resulted in larger concentrations within contractile cells and an increase in phases 4 and 0 of nodal cells, while shortening the phase 2 of both contractile and nodal cells. As a result of these changes, the heart experienced faster, stronger, and shorter cardiac contractions.
The wonderful Isoproterenol.
Similar to caffeine, isoproterenol caused positive inotropic effects on LTCC, RYR2, and circuit 2 activity in contractile cells, but had a positive chronotropic and dromotropic effect in nodal cells. The decrease in QT interval by 0.12 seconds, decreased PR segment by 0.17 seconds, decreased RR interval by 0.29 seconds, subsequent increased heart rate by 3 beats per minute, and increased SCA by 0.3241 millimeters are evidence of the increase in spontaneous depolarization and decrease in threshold potential of the nodal cells, thus increasing the heart rate, while the increased depolarization by the LTCCs speeds up AV node conduction. The positive feedback loop of intercellular calcium concentrations within contractile and nodal cells, bolstered by isoproterenol, speeds up their activation, inactivation, and inactivation recovery time, thereby causing faster, stronger, and shorter cardiac contractions.
But our contestants are not going home empty-handed. Up next, a couple of prizes they'll receive for coming on our show. But first, let's check in on our lovebirds' first date.
What a knockout! Here's what Bachelorette number 3 had in store for Brady.
Exposing the frog cardiac muscle to large amounts of concentrated potassium greatly disrupts the electrical and physiological stability of the heart. So much so that, because of its inability to repolarize, hyperpolarize, or generate action potential, the frog heart had no presentable waves in the ECG or ICA to measure. A high concentrated dose of potassium effectively stopped the heart.
What could have happened? Oh well, I guess the heart wants what it wants. Now on to our prizes for our other participants. They will leave here with
A Cookie Day invitation, an already dissected frog heart, warm ringers, 900 milliliters of Coca-Cola and a bag of pretzels, signature Patrick beanie, signature Michael soccer sweats, and our grand prize,
a one-of-a-kind, signed Dr. Armour Blue, collared, long-sleeved shirt with the sleeves still rolled up. Thank you for watching, and tune in next week for another thrilling round of The Dating Game.